Brand nerds. Back at you with another podcast of brands, beats, and bytes. And this one is a good one, y'all. This one is a good one. Next month on March 10th, that is the day that the Academy Awards for 2024 will air on ABC. Y'all all know what happened last year. Will did his thing. Chris Rock, unfortunately, was the recipient of Will doing his thing, which I don't condone. I want to be clear, brand nerds. I do not condone that, but it went down. So this year's Oscar, many people are going to be watching it, which leads me, LT, to our guest today. Now, I just want to be clear now. Our guest did not do anything to Will Smith or to Chris Rock, okay? Nothing to either one of those gentlemen. But she does work in the entertainment space and is an expert at entertainment marketing, LT. And we always say at Brand Positioning Doctors that people make decisions based on emotions,
yes,
and then justify with logic. This is what we say. This is what research says. And entertainment marketing is all about emotion.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about emotion. So we have in the building, brand nerds, someone who really understands marketing at an emotional, visceral level. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, full disclosure, brand nerds, the guest that we have in the building today is a former client, and we love her. We love her. So if you feel a little more love than normal, brand nerds, you know why. LT, can you let the people know who we have in the building today?
Oh, yeah, DC. We're really looking forward to this. We have Folayo Lasaki in the house today. Welcome, Folayo.
Hi. I want you guys to come with me everywhere, by the way, but continue. Thank you.
We're happy to do it. Folayo. So, okay, brand nerds, as DC said, in our Brand Positioning Doctors consulting practice, we get to work with some great people, and Folayo is certainly one of them. Also, pay attention to this, brand nerds. Folayo is one of our premier guests in having a fantastic balance of brands, beats, and bytes. So let's get into Folayo's super cool career path. So Folayo attends Pepperdine University, where she earns a BA in advertising. Now, D, brand nerds, if you're not familiar with Pepperdine, it may be one of the coolest campuses in the country, since it is in Malibu, California, overlooking the beautiful Pacific, right, D? It's incredible.
Yes.
D, I got to tell you, I think grads like Folayo immediately show they have incredible discipline in attending that school and actually earning a college degree, don't you think?
I couldn't have done it.
I don't think I could have either. So after graduation, Folayo gets her start as a marketing coordinator, first at Landmark Theaters, serving as a liaison between distributors and theaters for marketing and promotional materials. And then she goes to Variety, where she is involved in multiple areas, including event sponsorships, helping advertisers obtain optimal ad placement in the wonderful Variety magazine and online portal, and copywriting for marketing materials such as ads, events, and press releases. So brand nerds, as you can see, early in her career, Folayo was both figuring out marketing in the entertainment world and also where she fits. She then joins Film Independent as a marketing manager, where their mission is to champion creative independence in visual storytelling in all its forms and to foster a culture of inclusion. They support a global community of artists and audiences who embody diversity, innovation, curiosity, and uniqueness of vision. So as part of her brand-centric vision in that role, Folayo manages marketing initiatives from membership, educational, and talent development programs, the Los Angeles Film Festival, and the Spirit Awards, as well as developing and executing each brand and the marketing and media strategies for Film Independent, the LA Film Festival, and the Spirit Awards. So now Folayo continues to move up and now east, where she heads to NYC, to New York, joining IFP.org Filmmaker Magazine as their national advertising director, responsible for all print and digital advertising and marketing for IFP, Filmmaker Magazine, filmmakermagazine.com, and IFP.org, IFP Independent Film Week, the Gotham Awards, and the Made in New York Media Center. So after this success, Folayo heads back to LA, joining Hollywire as their director of marketing and business development. Hollywire features the latest Hollywood celebrity news, celebrity interviews, and updates on Hollywood's lifestyle and entertainment. When Folayo was leading all marketing and business development at Hollywire, check this out. According to our research, Hollywire was awarded YouTube's best pop news outlet in both 2014 and 2015, consecutively bearing over 1 billion lifetime views. Those are real results. With this success, Folayo moves upward, joining Soul Pancake as their VP head of marketing. Soul Pancake was originally founded by Rainn Wilson and is now an award-winning production company owned by Participant Media. In this position, Folayo owns and leads all elements of the marketing mix, and she and the team at Soul Pancake develop and produce award-winning campaigns, event series, and content initiatives. So brand nerds, we all know you have heard of a pretty successful comedian, actor, and super smart business person by the name of Kevin Hart.
Who that?
Who's that, right? Well, Kevin and his team bring Folayo on as the SVP and head of marketing and comms, originally for Laugh Out Loud, LOL, which was their multi-platform entertainment brand that includes marketing across all the LOL divisions, audio, studio, network, experiential, as well as the overall brand marketing and strategy. Additionally, Folayo successfully leads the messaging, positioning, and creative process for the rebrand and launch of the Heartbeat brand, and that's H-A-R-T, like Kevin's name. So Folayo then gets a great opportunity to join Microsoft in her current position as their senior campaign and strategy lead for the Microsoft Surface tablet, where she leads the global seasonal product and tentpole campaign strategy, as well as integrated cross-functional planning for the Microsoft Surface portfolio of devices. She's also principal and founder of Striped Elephant, a marketing comms firm working with clients at the cross-section of, guess what, brand nerds, entertainment, media, and technology to develop business strategies and creative marketing initiatives. In closing out her super impressive background, Folayo is also a writer, public speaker, and advocate for the representation of women and people of color in the media. She is member of IADAS, a voting member of the Telly Awards, and board member and marketing chair for WIMMYs, which is Women in Media, a 501c nonprofit networking group for women in the LA area working in digital media. Looking forward to this. Welcome to Brands, Beats, and Bytes, Folayo Lasaki.
Ooh, wow, that was you guys went deep. I like it.
You did it all, Folayo.
Yeah, it's funny. I always talk about my careers. It always made sense to me, but it kind of looked like the scenic route where it didn't show up. And then even before Landmark Theaters, I was in straight entertainment. I worked in casting. I worked I worked in management as a creative executive. So
didn't know that.
No, that's the part where it's like, that was too long ago, not to age myself. But yeah, I started my career on the production side of the industry. And I've always said that helps me from an entertainment marketing perspective, just speak both languages.
Oh, totally.
Didn't know that. All right, so now Folayo,
this is fun.
Yes.
with Larry doing his thing, this is why you need to take us with you. It's like we'll just walk in. You know how some celebrities and superheroes have theme music. Larry, we just roll with Folayo, and then Larry, you do your thing, I do my thing, and this is Folayo. Okay,
that's right.
Love it. Thank
All
you.
right. Okay. The next section is what we call Get Comfy. So this is going to be about you, but I want to take a pause. I'm a girl dad. I've got 3 daughters. And so whenever Pepperdine University is mentioned, since October last year, I get solemn. I get solemn. So in October of 2023, unfortunately, 4 women, all seniors, lost their lives. And Larry, I don't know if you've driven by Pepperdine, but like, so there's an area there where it's notorious for speeding traffic, and there's like a turn, and unfortunately, someone was speeding, and they killed 4 women. So I just want to mention young women. I want to mention their names and just have a quick moment of silence out of respect for these young women. Naima Ralston, Peyton Stewart, Aisha Weir, and Deslyn Williams. So just a quick moment of silence for these young women and their families. Cool. All right. Get comfy. Get comfy, Folayo. All right. So you have been around entertainment for a while. And Folayo, I worked in with entertainment for many years before I worked actually at a studio. And Folayo, Larry knows this. I thought because I'd worked with studios, record labels, producers, directors, actors, writers, I thought I had an understanding of how Hollywood worked. Once I got to the studio side, Folayo, I recognized I didn't know shit. I knew nothing. And one of the things I learned early on is that while on the corporate side in marketing and brand for the vast majority of my career, there were a bevy of prerequisites required before one could elevate to a particular position. You had to have a degree, sometimes a graduate degree. You had to have these different types of steps inside of an organization: assistant brand manager, associate brand manager, senior brand manager, director, on and on, until you get up into like the S, the S, the E's, and the C's of the corporate world. So here I am now on the, I'm inside of a studio, and it occurs to me that a lot of people in power, the prerequisite was they knew somebody. That was the prerequisite. There was no skill set. There was no experience. They just happened to know someone, and they were trusted by this person. Therefore, they had power. This shit blew my mind. This blew my mind. So I'm, as my mother would say, rest in power. She would say, baby, when I would talk too long, are you arriving at a point? I'm arriving at a point, Folayo. I'm arriving at a point. Okay. You, Folayo, as someone who has been in this industry for a minute.
And thrived, by the way.
And thrived. As a Black woman, what has it been like for you matriculating all of this? And I've just mentioned one thing that makes entertainment industry different than other industries. What have you been able to do to matriculate this thing successfully?
That is, I tend to keep my head down and just keep going. But I think entertainment, the industry is interesting because it's a mix of nepotism, meritocracy, grit, stick-to-itedness, whatever, some kind of perseverance, and being able to outwit or do the job better. But you don't know who you're meeting when you're interacting, because there's a mix of everybody. There's some people who have the job because it was handed to them. There's other people who have the job because they're the best person for the job. They might have had a slow route or a lightning fast route. You don't know. And then there's other people who are just like trucking along and they get an opportunity. So it's a really, I think a lot of industries work like that in their own way, but it is definitely a mix of being in the right place at the right time with the right information and the right ability. And I think that for me, coming from, I grew up in Denver. I'm a first generation American. My family is not enamored at all with the entertainment industry. So there was never a situation where I had any kind of connection. So I've literally just had to make my way. That, when I talk about the scenic route, that's what it is. It's moving around, collecting enough information to make me very, very strong and to make me have an opinion or a perspective that is different from other people. So working in entertainment, working in media, working in tech, working with brands, working with filmmakers, moving from left to right, understanding the creative, the business, and the marketing, also just having a genuine curiosity about the world and business and talking to people who don't think like me, allows me to look at things differently than other people. And so when everybody else is looking left, I'm looking to the right in the corner at that thing that they never even saw coming. And that has been how I have been able to move through the industry. That's not to say that it's been easy, that there haven't been setbacks, where there haven't been moments where like, I'm like, oh, I should have been here by now. Cause I'm still human, and
Yep.
you always want to move faster, faster or higher or whatever. But I think that my way of doing it, and this is going to sound much more egomaniacal than I mean it to, but is to be undeniable. Like, where you might not know me, but you might see work that I do and just be like, well, damn. And that's what I want. That's the moment that I want. And so I really put in the work to get myself to that. And then when I see that I am falling short, try to figure out how I can pick up the slack, my own slack. So learn more about whatever it is that I'm faced with, and then use my perspective to help me be, the tool that they didn't know that they had in the box.
Love that. Love that, D.
That's good. That's good, Folayo. That's good.
I got nothing to add. That's wonderful.
I don't think there's anything to add.
Nope.
Actually.
Thank you.
All right, Folayo. We are going to our next segment. We call it 5 questions. It goes down like this. I ask a question, Larry asks a question. We go back and forth until we arrive at 5. I'm up first, taking the first snap at the Super Bowl this weekend. All right, Folayo, take yourself back. Recall a time where you had a branding experience where it just really touched your soul. And maybe in some ways you were so into it that it surprised you. You developed a relationship with this brand, or an interest in this brand. You could not get enough of it, a bit like your first love. What was this brand for you, or branding experience?
I thought about this, and there's kind of 2 ways that this has gone. When I thought about it, it was movies first. There was a style of movies that came through, which explains just, my career trajectory, where it was like, I remember thinking about, formerly, or currently, Miramax films or Focus Features. The specific types of movies that they made, I always felt very connected to. And so
was there one in particular? Was there one in particular that you really?
Good Will Hunting. I mean, I was older. This happened before, but Good Will Hunting is the one that hits me in the head. Where I remember being, I don't know, 15 maybe, and seeing that movie and just being like kind of floored by it. And the storytelling, and even when I had endeavors or thoughts about working on that side of the business, where the idea, this was also the first time I understood that like you could write a movie and that everything that happened was written like that. Again, I grew up in Denver. It's so funny to me to think about it now, but I can remember being like, oh my God, like they wrote every single word. None of that just happens. And I think that was when I was cerebrally able to understand that. And so there was a type of movie that was coming out around mid-90s that was really storytelling that I just loved. But from a brand's perspective, when I was younger, there were these Calvin Klein ads that were all black and white photos. Now, I've loved photography. My dad used to take a lot of pictures. I started taking pictures, and there were early 90s, I think. There was a collection of Calvin Klein ads that were just black and white images with whoever the model or whatever was. ironically, half the time they didn't have clothes on, but they were selling clothes, which was, I think about that now as being somewhat ridiculous, but also very kind of an intriguing thing. But they were such striking images to talk about emotion. I just remember, like, I put these on my wall. Like, I had a wall in my bedroom that was just dedicated to these black and white Calvin Klein ads. And it felt more art, but it also then made me be like, I need to buy CK1. You know what I mean? Where it just made me feel the association. It felt luxury. It felt just slightly out of reach for me, which made me want it even more. There was something about that kind of almost like, we don't care that you're looking, we don't even care if you look, thing that they were doing that made you just want to lean in more, that I just remember being really, really interested in. I mean, I'm sure it didn't hurt that it was like beautiful people left and right. It was like Tyson Beckford and Kate Moss and all of these people, but it was this, it made me want to be a part of that brand, like, which is just, it wasn't even that I felt like I needed to own anything. It was, this was me at the time, like going to Ross to see if they had like the CK, knockoffs that were maybe like a C and half a K, that fell off, but just wanting to be included in that. That's what I remember as far as that love. And I think of things like that because I don't know that I was the target audience, but so many years later, I can still think about that and it still has resonance. Wow. And I can still understand why I felt that way. And you can see Calvin Klein evolving from that, but still having that same thing. I don't know. I mean, people don't really read magazines in the way that they did back then. So I don't know if it's the same. Right. But having tangible things that I could rip out of the magazines and like, back when they also had like the smell things, I'm sure they still do. But like all of it felt very sensory and just cool, something that you wanted to be a part of. And also that aspirational, you didn't see it on social media. Like it wasn't, that kind of thing wasn't in your face every minute. So it landed for me.
Folayo, that is you took us back there, the way you described that. You really did. And what I'm struck with, and Folayo, we've had these conversations with you, and DC and I and our team have it all the time. You didn't talk about the product. You talked about the Calvin Klein was a feeling, was a part of the brand. Like you even said, well, I don't even remember, like they were half naked. The product wasn't even really part of it at all. But Calvin Klein, and he got it early, right? Like, he really understood, because Calvin Klein's a real person, everyone. And he and his team really understood about emotionally connecting with people. And it wasn't about the product. It was about the brand.
Yeah. I'll say this, Folayo, really interesting that you said it was just a bit out of your reach, which made you want it more.
Yeah.
That subtle, that gap between what you think you can touch and what's just beyond it is seductive. I remember when I was a very young man wanting to learn how to kiss, and I came across something, and it stuck with me. It said, because young men, they like teenage boys just, okay, so it said approach and then pull back. And then she'll come to you. And I'm like, I never forgot that. Okay. I never forgot that. And there's something about that little space, something about that space. I really like that.
Yeah, it's something about it made the having feel special. And I'm not even joking. It was like, okay, well, my parents are certainly not going to spend this much money on any of this stuff. But there is a Ross second season something that and it was enough. And it felt like,
Right.
you know, that was in those days when people were rocking just like, it's like just Calvin Klein sweatshirts everywhere. And it was like, if that's as close as I can get to this,
Right.
I'll take it.
Right.
Just so that you know I'm in, just so you know I'm in this. It's like, this was a birthday present. This sweatshirt, this hooded sweatshirt that says this man's name who I've never met. I just feel so, like, I feel so a part of it. And ironically, I don't really wear I don't wear branding at all anymore, but there was that time where it was like, yes, I am wearing this as a billboard, as a badge, I'm part of it too. And so, yeah, it was a fun question to kind of think about.
You took us back there. That's visceral. Even the way you're talking about that, you brought me back. I forgot about those ads where, you know, for colognes or perfumes, where brand nerds, you younger brand nerds, where magazines don't really exist anymore. They used to have a part of the ads where you could actually smell what the cologne or perfume was like, and it gave you that sensory, that obviously that other component, which took you there even more.
Yeah, I remember, like I said, I had a mural. There was a whole wall. So as much as I like that, I would always have to cut those off, and then it would make it off center. So I had a whole, like, it was the little smell strips were problematic in my mural design, but very cool, very nice.
All right, let's go to the next. That's great stuff, Folayo. We're going to go to the next question. Who is having the most influence on your career?
Whew, that is an interesting question. I feel like I'm influenced by everybody. How do I put this without sounding strange? So I think that for me, I am very motivated by athletes. As far as like their commitment and the like elite athletes, not just not just like the day player, but like elite athletes, I think I feel influenced by. And you can take any name of any athlete that is just great, because and I love sports documentaries for this exact same reason, because I watch it and then I feel motivated to do more, or to get better, or just to sharpen just a little bit more. And so that, I would say, is a big motivator. I think my family is a big motivator for me.
Can you shout out names?
Perspective.
Can you shout out
my dad and my mom specifically. My dad is somebody who my parents have always given us the gift of high expectations. And I think that that's a motivation to want to meet it. Like, nobody has ever in my home expected less of me, which makes me always want to like meet it and exceed it. And I think that I would say is a familial trait. I have a brother and a sister, and I think people that have met us would probably say the same thing about them as well. And so that always motivates me to just, I'm not somebody, I don't like to just show up. Like, if I'm going to be there, I really want to like make it count. And that's a big motivator for me, because I feel like I can lounge in my lounging time, but if it's time to work, then let's get to work. And those are big motivators for me. And I don't know if there's any person, but like, I like to be motivated by great. Like, it's why I like athletes, but it's also why I like Oprah, not just because she's a Black woman, but because she is a really successful Black woman. Like, that is somebody who I'm like, I could spend some time chasing you. And that makes that works. I like that. I like having, like, I think maybe maybe I should go see somebody about this. I'm like, just out of reach. I gotta just keep running. I'm like, now that we're having this little therapy session, I'm feeling like maybe I just can't be satisfied, and that's my motivation. Too much.
No, this sounds great. Can you say the names of your family if you don't mind? Let's give them a shout out.
I don't know if they want me to say their names. They're
okay, well, if they don't want to,
but mom and dad, that's who their names are. Okay. But yes, no, I have it's an interesting thing. Nobody in my family is really lovers. They're not a lot of lovers of like attention.
Mm.
You know,
Got
it's
it.
like we don't do it for the accolades. But they know who they are and they know who they are to me. And I think that helps all of us stay grounded.
Love it.
But yeah, anybody that's doing great. I love looking at CEOs of great companies, small, big, whatever, and just seeing like,
Love
how
it.
did you do it? Where did you go? And then also people that kind of were like sleepers who then showed up everywhere, are like, if a brand does really well, I want to know who's behind it. Like,
Right.
you know, just like that kind of thing, because I'm also motivated by the people who I see coming up behind me, who are like coming up with new ways of doing and thinking, people who can like understand this gigantic matrix and make new ways, like from a digital or a social perspective. That motivates me. They have impact in my career because if you're if you're only looking ahead, someone's going to pass you. So that's where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm motivated by, like, it's like the racehorse, where it's like they kind of need to see who's next to them. Like you need to see who's in front of you, you need to see who's coming up behind you so that you can just keep pushing. So I like working and kind of communicating with younger people. That motivates me a lot and has a high impact, just because they see things so differently than I did, because they grew up so differently. Like, I didn't grow up with a cell phone. I don't know what that experience is like, to be of the mobile first generation. It came into my life later. Like social media, I remember when social media became a term. There's a lot of people who I'm working with now where it's like, what do you mean you remember? Hasn't it always been there? And so to talk to people who have never known differently is such an impactful thing, because they will never be able to see it how I see it, but I will never be able to see how they see it. But if I'm listening enough and I'm humble enough, then I can combine those things for something new.
Love that. Do you want to go to question 3?
I do. All right, Folayo. You have many accolades, many W's throughout your career. But we don't want to know about those in this question. In this question, we want to know your biggest F up on you, Folayo. You made the mistake. Your thinking was flawed. You thought it was going to work. It did not work. And then what you learned from it.
So without naming names, well, I should start by saying, like, just take your pick. Like, I fail a lot, but I kind of look at it because I'm always trying.
Right.
Like, so, but in times so I don't think that failing or effing up is that much of a problem, because if you are never, you are really playing it safe. So, but that's kind of the more kumbaya answer.
Yeah.
When I think about just a time in my career where it was like, oh, geez, wow. I worked on a partnership, and and you know, short story long is, I saw the revenue opportunity and decided that I would choose commerce over customer. And I created this partnership and I did all this stuff and we made all this content, and it tanked. And it was because I wasn't thinking about who was on the other side of this. I was thinking about how to reach my personal revenue or targets or goals, or how to make the sale, or how to say I worked with this brand. And I realized at that point, my big learning is not all money is good money and not all money is the right money. And I think that that failure or that F up has actually stretched into my life beyond work, is that if you are making moves without thinking about the end result, I've done this in terms of jobs or clients or whatever, where it's like, ugh, this was a money decision. This was a stupid decision. It actually made me kind of coin this phrase that my former coworkers hated, but it was don't sacrifice dollars tomorrow for pennies today. And that's what I learned, is that you have to play the long game, even when it's harder. Now, that is a very fun phrase, and it's great to put on a whiteboard. When you're faced with it, it is a decision that you have to make actively, because again, it's not just a work decision, it's a life decision. There are so many times that I myself have faced this choice and been wooed by the shining lights, and then immediately just been like, oh Jesus, like, learn it. Like, I like to not make the same mistake more than once. Like, I make lots of mistakes, but I like to just make them the one time. This is the one that I think it's an exercise that has to consistently be worked and sharpened, and just, you got to do whatever the practice is to make sure that you're thinking about that end result and what you really want at the end of this. Because anytime that I haven't thought about, okay, so the day after this, does this get me closer or further to where I'm actually trying to be? So that's where my failures have come, and continue to come sometimes. I'd love to be this, very elevated, I've moved past this failure. It's just not fact. So like, it's a lesson that I learn regularly.
I think we all do to some degree, right? And I think what you're really saying is also that if you're have such zeal to get stuff now, and two things, aren't thinking of end result, like you said, Folayo, like, what's my real objective here? Which is, if you do that, you have to take a breath and think, right?
Yeah.
You got to pause, right? And then if you do that, then having the patience to really be focused on the end result rather than what's the gleaming, shining object that you talked about that's there today.
Yeah. I was a preemie, so patience isn't really built into me, but
That's funny.
Ask my family, I'm not lying. Like, I'm like, I don't like to wait. It's a problem. But I also think that this is an interesting question, because I think even beyond that, my choice in failures can also be a bit of a failure. Like, I think, even if I think of it would be better because I'm consistently trying. Like I said, I fail a lot because I try hard, but I think that another failure in that space is that, are you failing at the things that matter? Like, failure, I saw somebody quoted, I don't remember who it was, but they said it's not failure, it's feedback. And so if sometimes I get my head wrapped up in like solving this problem that doesn't really matter to me, and I will figure out how to get it left, right, center. Like, I'll fail, I'll fall, I'll do whatever. And sometimes even that is a distraction from the thing I might be too afraid to move forward into.
Right.
Like, this question got me thinking about fear of failure. And when the stakes are more personally low, I think there is less fear of failure. You're like, it's cool, I can face anything. But when you kind of dig deeper into the risk, are you failing in those directions as well, where the failure might hurt a little more, like hurt a little more of whether your ego, your pride, your ability to walk forward. I'd say that is an F up, in that sometimes there's the lack of, I don't know if it's bravery or like, I don't know, but like maybe there's the lack of fortitude to fail in the places that matter. And that in and of itself can be an F up.
That's interesting. Really putting yourself out there, I think.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is great, D. Have any more thoughts on this?
I don't. I love the quotes. This is a very quotable podcast.
Oh, right? It is. Oh, Folayo, it sure is. Oh, man. So we're going to go to question 4, and really love to serve this up to Folayo because, again, as we mentioned earlier, she really has the brands, the beats, and the bites. So regarding technology and marketing, Folayo, can you tell us where you think marketers should lean in or best leverage tech? Or you could go to areas that you think they should be leery or simply avoid.
I don't know. Like, I don't want to say that I think anybody should avoid anything, but I think people should be mindful. Again, like, what are you trying to do? Tech is a tool, not it. It is best used when you know what you're doing, is my thought. I think a lot of people these days are replacing experience, thoughtfulness, information with tech. And that's when it can be a little dicey. But if you use it to just amplify or amp up what you are already great at, whatever tech that might be, simplification, like, then I think you should lean into it. For marketers, I think it's also just being clear about the customer and not getting like drunk on the technology. Like, there's lots of things. And I mean, it is wild how many opportunities there are that are thrown at the face of marketers these days, is what you can use. And here's a tool, and here's a software, and here's a thing. And it's just like, okay, what, like, it's so hard. And I think that you can easily be distracted by how much you have to play with, and then forget that there was actually something that you were trying to get done. And so in the same way, like, I'm going to talk about architecture as though I know anything about it. In the same way that an architect, I think, would build out the plans and then figure out what tools get them there. That's how I think marketers should be thinking about technology. Like, especially like my thing with tech, I have this consulting company that I've had for years. And when I'm on my own, I use tech to help me get 6 more employees. Like, when you can use it to extend your arms left and right, that's what you want. But if you're using it to somehow replace you or your need to know, that's when I think it gets just dangerous. And you see it where it's just like, what is this? Like, what are we doing here? So I am all for, like, use tech, get on these platforms, but also just make sure it makes sense for you. Like, don't do it just because you heard somebody else was using it. Like, really think about how this works for you. I think that sometimes there's a kind of this blanketing of, you should use this because of X, or you shouldn't use this. But that is fairly presumptuous to think that you know enough about the person on the other side or the business on the other side to know where their shortcomings are. So I'm more of the, like, I use things to help me be more productive. I use things for project management. When I see a bunch of emails coming in and whatever, I'm like, I need help to just help me organize these things, because the other thing with all the tech is that people can, and this, I'm not just talking about new tech, I'm talking about tech that's been coming for the last handful of years, is that you
Right.
can be bombarded with so much information that just having anything to act as a filter is very, very helpful for me as a marketer, specifically for me as a strategist. There are a lot of things that I am told that really don't matter. Not that they don't matter in the world, but for my role, I'm like, I don't need to know this. So
Right.
just being able to use technology to filter what I can get to later is super helpful. Because there's this book called The One Thing, but it's like spend 90% of your energy on the one thing that matters and 10% on everything else. And so I just need help to help me with the 10%. I know that the one thing that I need to do. But I would say sometimes the 10% which is the 90% can sometimes get a little lost in the sauce. I'm sure there are former coworkers that can attest to that about me, but I will just say what I lack there, I make up for in charm, so we're all good.
Well, we can personally attest to that.
Hey, Folayo, I have recently become really curious in using AI to create images and content.
Okay.
And so there's one gentleman that I met with. His name is Eric David. And he introduced me to Midjourney and something called Doll, and then the letter E3, Dolly 3. And so these are forms of AI that you can go into to give it information, and it'll give you back an image, and in some cases a moving image. And then I also just last week on Thursday or Friday, chilling at Bar Margo here in Atlanta, I had drinks with a friend of Larry's, who's now my friend. His name is Joel. And what's Joel's last name, Larry?
Okay.
Okay, so Joel Case. So Folayo, he was breaking down for me these AI platforms. And what was consistent with both of them was the power of the prompt.
Right.
What are you prompting these things to give back to you? And you talked about you can go down a rabbit hole. They said, both of them said, you can give Midjourney a prompt, and then you can change one word and it'll in the prompt, and it'll give you back something slightly different or vastly different. And so as I'm hearing you talk about technology as a facilitator, what I want to just encourage the brand nerds to do is that really work on thinking about your prompts for technology.
Right.
What are you prompting technology to do for you or for a project or for a team? That's what I took away from my connection from their answers and yours.
Yeah, and Microsoft, like to plug, has Copilot, which there's been all over the news. And prompts are huge, and it is something that if you can think about, I think for me, and I'm not a prompt expert, I'll be the first to say this, but where I find success is, again, being clear on what it is I'm trying to do.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, asking the right follow-up questions as well. Great. So there's like the first prompt.
That's good.
And then there's the follow-up prompt.
Right.
Because it's learning, and it's digging through all of this information. Like, I won't pretend to understand the tech because it would just be too hilarious and ridiculous for all of us. But whatever's happening in the background, if you know not just the first question that you want to ask, but the second question, because it is kind of a funneling system to get you to what you want. And then double check. Also, don't don't assume that just because you asked a question that then you're done forever. Like you're still a part of this. Hey, this is a team. Like, come on. So, but the prompts, I mean, I feel like I've seen classes that are now popping up on like prompts and like, there's, I feel like a whole LinkedIn journey happening right now where people are saying the best prompts for your, chats, and it's interesting because it's a different skill now. You have to, it's learning a new language,
Right.
in a sense. And I think that the cool part about these things is that they are using human language to help you so that you can speak to it more conversationally, but at the same time you still have to learn the human version of the machine. Like, it's kind of a little head expanding, almost to the point of blowing kind of thing for me, but it is it can be such a powerful tool, but I always am like, it is a tool. It is not, it is in the same way a hammer can't build a house, like use it as a tool. So.
Well said. That's well summed up right there, D. Don't you think?
I agree. Shall I go to the next question?
Let's do it.
Folayo, what are you most proud of?
I think when I think about what I'm most proud of, it's not necessarily accomplishments. I think I've been fortunate enough to work on cool projects with really interesting people across my career. And these are small wins and big wins and things you've seen on shows or TV and just things that are just for me. But I think when I really go into it and think about what I am most proud of, it's that I have remained very curious and very much me in all of it.
Wow.
It is, I just want to learn more. I want to be better tomorrow than I was today. And that hasn't changed. And that makes me feel really proud. Just of myself, because I think that you can also get into environments where the learning has stopped, and maybe even the learning, if you wanted to keep riding the wave, you wouldn't have to learn. You could just learn how it is done in this space and be fine. And that has never worked for me. And I'm proud of that. I'm also proud of the fact that despite the challenges, I'm not afraid to just say what I think in whatever room I find myself in. And it doesn't matter how high up or how low down or whatever, left, right, center the group is. I know, there's a Dr. Seuss, today you are you, that is truer than true. There is no one alive that is youer than you. Like, I think that is that's such an important thing. Nobody can see it from my perspective. And so again, even if everybody is looking right, I feel really proud that I can be the one who goes left or vice versa. Like, and not for the sake of being different,
Right.
but if I genuinely see something that doesn't go with what everybody else is saying, even if it doesn't work, even if nobody else agrees with me and we go the way the room went, like, I just feel proud that I didn't keep it to myself and that I'm still feeling like interested enough, because I think that's a sign, interested enough to keep talking. And just strong enough in my own self or constitution or whatever, to just keep looking more deeply. Like, those are the things that I feel proudest of, is that kind of journey for improvement. I don't think that anybody, I just learned a long time ago that if your pride is attached to external accolades, you are going to be very disappointed. And
Yep.
like that, you know, from the perspective of a Black female or whatever, can go deep into a lot of places. But like that is that is what is the most pride inducing for me.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff, Dee. I love this.
Wow.
I don't have anything to add. That's just amazing stuff. I will say one quick thing. Folayo, I love the fact that you have the Constitution and the will, along with the thought to be so conscious about yourself and where you fit, and then having the confidence and fortitude to just be you.
Thank you. It's that's the yeah, I think I see what it looks like when you don't do that. So I feel really proud to like I'm like, okay, it's not always the easiest, but
that's the deepest answer we've ever had to that question. I'll tell you that. And that was amazing. It was.
Yeah, this is a no, as the people say, no rap cap.
All right. Well, that really is a great finale to that segment, don't you think, Dee?
I do. Yeah.
So now, Folayo, we're gonna go to something really fun. It's what's poppin'? What's poppin', Dee?
What's poppin'?
So, Folayo, this is our chance to shout out, shout down, or simply air something happening in and around marketing and brands, beats, and bytes that we think is good fodder for discussion. So, I think I've got a really good one for the three of us to chew on.
Let's hear it.
Let's do it. It is the future of movie going in theaters. So let me give you all just a little context, right? So we all know what's happened with pandemic. I'm going to throw some numbers out for you. This is from Box Office Mojo, right? So in 2019, this is domestic yearly box office. It was 11.4 million. And then obviously the pandemic happens in 2020, it's 2 billion, right? Then 2021, it's still pandemic. You've got Spider-Man No Way Home happening, but it's up to 4.5 billion. And then 2022, Top Gun Maverick comes back. It's now up to 7 billion. In 2023, we all know that we have a Barbie and Oppenheimer come out, and it goes back to almost 9 billion. And by the way, for context, in 2019, it was 11 billion. So you're about 2 billion short of where you were. Other interesting numbers, though, in 2023, there were only 589 releases, where in 2019, there was 910. So actually, the average performance per film in 2023 was 15 million versus in 2019, it was 12.5 million. So actually, the average per film was higher in 2023 than pre-pandemic. So those are numbers. And then I'm going to hit you with just something that happened recently with me, and then I'm going to shut up and want to hear you all talk. So I was at Sherry and I were at the theater 2 weeks ago, and we love going to the movies. For Sherry and I, and our son Jake too, all three of us just love going to the movies in the theater. And we just saw this nice little rom-com called Anyone But You. Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell were in it. Nice, fun movie. And I have to tell you, there were parts of the movie where they were funny, and I started laughing. And the woman next to me on my left, Sherry's on my right, she was laughing. And then were times she started laughing, and I was laughing, and she was laughing. And it was a cascading effect, so much so that a whole row picked up on the two of us laughing, and everybody started laughing. And so much so at the end of the film, we dapped each other up because it was much more enjoyable that all happened. And by the way, I don't think that phenomenon would have happened pre-pandemic, but I don't think as a moviegoer, you would have noticed it as much. So that's something that just happened, and it was so much more enjoyable because we were in the theater, eating our popcorn, drinking our Cokes, and having this wonderful experience with other moviegoers. So for me, and I'm very biased here, I do think there's been the demise of people going to the movies since the advent of television in 1950, people said, oh, people aren't going to go to the movies anymore. And while it is definitely difficult, and my sister was telling me she was at a movie in Connecticut a couple of weeks ago on Saturday night, and there was hardly anyone there. There was like, it was Saturday night, like 7:30, and there's hardly anyone there. And our theater, by the way, was packed. So I've said a lot. I'd love to hear you all, what you all think with both of your wonderful background in this area.
Folayo, your thoughts?
Okay. I have lots of thoughts. And this is from somebody who at one point in time, it was not uncommon for me to see 3 movies in a weekend.
Oh, wow.
So like,
wow.
Or in high school, like I am a lover of the movies. I am a lover. And I think you hear directors talk about this a lot, but I agree too. The shared experience is part of the movie going experience.
It really
Will
is.
showed up. One name, my best friend Maya and I, we were like, part of what we always joke makes us, you know, very simpatico is that we are always the awkward laughers. We are the people laughing when nobody else is, but we understand each other and we find things funny that other people don't, where it's like the way somebody is running. Like if anybody ever goes and sees or watches The Man in the Iron Mask, this is one that always points out to me. There's a scene and it's like a super cinematic moment. We saw this in the theater together where they're all running in a line. And Leonardo DiCaprio has this like awkward metal mask on and is running, and it is the most awkward run you've ever seen. Now, everybody else is probably thinking, oh my God, this is so valiant. And she and I in the theater together, dying, just losing it. And so that joint experience is so powerful. And then also uninterrupted time.
Yes.
Because like home viewing, and I've said this before, but I'm a 3-screener. I got my phone, I got my computer, and I got the TV. So it's mostly me pausing and rewinding because I miss the last 10 minutes. So I think there is personally, to me, no substitute for a theater experience. And I do think that people will want that. However,
I knew there was a but coming, D.
There is a but. And the but is I went to the movies 2 weeks ago. And I definitely, since the pandemic, have seen less and less movies in the theater, just habit, you know, habits formed. Right. I stayed home longer, but it's really expensive. Like it's really pricey to see a movie now. It like again, in high school, there would be 20 of us who that's what we would do is go see a movie because we had no money, but we wanted to hang out together. So we'd hang out in the parking lot for a little while, then go see the movie. But when you're thinking about a $40 or a $50 night, it's just a different kind of ask. Like you're asking somebody to make a significantly higher commitment. The box office, I think what you're seeing is that people still like the eventizing of, Mission Impossible came out, I think the 2 weeks before. So it was Mission Impossible, Barbie, and Oppenheimer had this like resurgence this last year, which was amazing. And there's so many people that work in the movie industry. So people need to go to theaters. Like it's this chicken and egg thing. But I would also question, I'm like, it was 11.4 billion in 2019, 9 billion this last year. I'm also curious, like, how much were what would be the budget differences on these movies?
Good question.
Like, I looked at the budget for, I don't remember which movie it was recently, but it was almost $300 million. And I'm like, well, that's great. Like, that's $300 million is a lot of money. And that doesn't include the marketing budget. So it's just like
it's double that at least, D, right? You would know that.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. And so you're spending, $500 million to get a $9 billion box office, where I think we're creating bigger spectacles to get more people to the movies. Then the price is getting higher, so less people can have access to it that would want to see these movies. And so there's so many, and then I'm not even gonna get into the streaming conversation, because then the box
Yeah.
off the window at the theater is getting shorter and shorter and shorter, which means if you're deciding between the $50 you want to spend here, the $50 you want to spend there, with full knowledge that in, I don't know, 7 weeks, you can just watch it at home, even though you would prefer to see it at the theater. I'm not answering your question, I'm just talking, but I do think that there is, I think that I don't think that people will ever do away with going to a movie, because it's like, if anybody can remember the first movie they saw in a theater, it is, at least for me, like, it's like this visceral moment. I collected movie ticket stubs for like 15 years.
Wow.
I just, like, I had them. I was very into
What
it.
was that first movie? Do you remember?
Well, yes, I do remember the first movie. The first movie that I remember very vividly seeing, I think it was with Shelley Long, and she had died and come back in somebody else's body, I think is what it was.
Okay.
I think it was, but I wanted to see Pinocchio. This is what I like. This is more a conversation with like the dynamics of being the youngest child in a family who wanted to see the animated Pinocchio and ended up seeing a Shelley Long movie when I was like 6. But
not the same. Not the
funny.
same.
not the same. So I was very much interested, but I was definitely outvoted by the people, like my
Clearly.
mom, my brother, my sister, against me, where it's like, are we going to see Pinocchio or not? But I also remember leaning into it and being really interested in it. I'll look for the name of the movie, but it was this, like, I don't know, it just felt super cool. And at that point, we were really just, I'm sure I had seen another movie in the theater, but like, mostly I remember watching the VHS tapes, and oftentimes even watching the VHS tapes of what we recorded off of TV. So like, that was how, like, that's how we were watching it.
Movies
so
were a
that-
big deal for you and your family. Well, for
yeah,
you,
it was a big deal, and I really, really enjoyed it. And so I don't think, and then even if you go to a kid's movie now, like I remember seeing Up years ago, but there's kids in the audience and they're watching just like jaw dropped, and they're enjoying it in a way that doesn't happen at home. And I don't think anybody wants to get rid of that, but I think it's a bigger conversation about how are we going to make this as easy to do as it once was.
No, you're bringing up great points. Dee, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yes, me too.
I'm going to pick up where Folayo was going about expensive now to go to movies, but that's going to be my second point. My first point, I'm going to go back. When my sister and I only have a sister, when we visited Disney World in Florida as kids, my mother took us into a theater. And I don't remember what was happening on the stage, but what was happening in the seats is when wind would blow on the stage, wind would blow on us in the seats.
Right.
When something would shake on the stage, our seats would shake.
Right.
And I will tell you, Folayo and Larry, this blew my mind.
Right.
Completely blew my mind. It went from me viewing what was happening on stage to being a part of what was happening on stage.
That's experiential. That's experiential, right?
Yeah, never forgot that. Cut to now I'm in Hollywood. And there's this thing called IMAX. Now it's not that big. It's not that big in terms of like volumetrically. It was not that big. Not that many screens, but somehow it became this really big deal for the tentpole movies. Folayo mentioned them. They had to have the IMAX version.
Right.
IMAX version. So now let's go to today. Now I'm going to Folayo's point. The point. This is my second point, but it was one of hers. Argyle is the big tentpole movie now. A standard ticket is $13.88 in Atlanta. The IMAX ticket is $25.03.
Wow. Nearly
double. And so what's popping for me is the movie industry recognizes that for people to go into these theaters, they've got to give them a heightened experience. And that heightened experience is going to cost more money. That's what's popping for me.
That's really interesting. So how do you all reconcile, by the way, Folayo, our son Jake, who affectionately calls his nephew, Jake worked his summer job. He worked at our theater, the movie theaters in town here in Walnut Creek. And so he was working during the whole Barbie and Oppenheimer, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And he saw the Barbie phenomenon, which made his eyes roll. But I thought was amazing, by the way. I thought Barbie was amazing. My wife and I saw it. There were many people, and obviously most were female, who were dressing up and going to the movies 3, 4, 5, 6 times that he saw. Like, she was here last night, you know? And so there's that. My point of that is that clearly that movie was so great for its brand lover, its target audience, its real target audience, the real brand lover, that they loved it so much. They were so emotionally connected. They couldn't get enough of it.
I mean, I'm with you. Like, mine was Titanic. I saw that 5 times in the theater.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
5 times. Like,
there
it's not like it changed. Like, it ended the exact same way every time, but I saw it with my family. I saw it with one group of friends, and then another group of friends, and then a different, like, I saw it 5 times in the theater.
Yeah.
Would I make that choice if I was paying $28? I don't know. Maybe. Probably not. But
Yeah.
I saw it and I loved it. And then I think about even like The Sixth Sense, which I also saw in the theater, and the collective gasp.
Great movie.
Like, you want to look next to somebody. You want to look at the person next to you. And this is where it's like sporting events and movies where all of a sudden, like, you're touching strangers, right? Where you're like, oh my God, and hitting people that you don't know, or it's like, wow, that's in ordinary settings, that kind of intimacy is very inappropriate, where it's like, I've been to, football games or whatever, where you hug the person next to you.
Oh, yeah.
This is crazy. This person could be a killer. You have no idea, but we are rooting for the same team. So we are going to hug each other and high five and pretend like we are family at this moment. So I think it's that. And to your point, DC, in terms of the eventizing, I think sports is a good way. Like, I think it was, maybe Steph Curry on a podcast, but talking about like the eventizing and how they're doing a really good job making things an event. I think that's what it is. It's like people want to be next to people. Like, they just do. It's how we're programmed. And so, yeah, make it, get some of the blocks out, make it feel fun. I remember, like, when people would line up, this was before, I suppose, online tickets, when you, like, when the Star Wars movies came out and people were lined up in costume outside for days, which is, I personally, I've never understood that. I'm like, you can see it in a week, but whatever.
Exactly. I never understood that either.
I'm like, this movie will be available in this theater, at least at that time, for the next 4 months. So feel free to put your regular clothes on and come back in 2 weeks. But it is such a, people love it. Like, Lord of the Rings, everybody's dressed up like elves on a sidewalk. Like, this was a normal occurrence. Like sneakers were dropping. That's how people used to sign up for movies. So
true. I remember, Folayo, where you're going, and that Seinfeld did an episode about it, the ticket buyer's line and the ticket holder's line. You had to be, which line is this? And so
I have done it where back, I would go to the theater days before and buy tickets in advance. Like, so I'm excited for, I don't have any solutions, by the way, but I am excited for when the brilliant people who figure out how to make movie going a weekend, like a Friday night staple again.
Yeah.
Because it was, where it was like, what do you want to do? I don't know. Let's go see a movie. And it was that simple.
Yep. And by the way, the luxury, the recliners is also that we have, and I would never go to a theater now that doesn't have those.
I go back and forth on the recliners.
Oh.
I'm like, I like the big wide seats, but at the same time, I'm like, we're not at home. Like, get your feet down. Like, there's so many people. I'm like, what are you doing? Come on, stop lounging. Lean in, watch the damn movie. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. We can agree to disagree on that. That's all good. This is an amazing conversation. Anything to add, you guys, before we go to the show close?
Not for me. This
No.
amazing. Amazing.
That was a great conversation. All right, D. So I'm gonna hit up first. Folayo, I can't even number the amount of learnings that you posited here. It's amazing. But so I'm gonna keep it as brief as I can. I had 8, and I had almost 20. So I'm gonna keep them brief as I can. So number one, most people don't have the nepotism advantage that Folayo was alluding to. So like Folayo, outwit and grit to meet or exceed your objective. That's number one.
Outwit and grit. Nice.
I love that.
Nice.
I'm gonna write that down.
You said that, and I put those two together. You had them separate, but I'm putting them together. So number 2, if you are always trying, you're always going to fail. Just learn from it. Number 3, don't sacrifice dollars for tomorrow for pennies today. If you make moves putting money first and without thinking about end results, as DC would say, problemo. That's number 3. Number 4, it's not failure, it's feedback. I love that one. 5, simplification. This is regarding marketing and tech. Simplification. Be clear about the customer or your consumer, whichever it is, B2B or B2C, and don't get drunk on the tech. Number 6, spend 90% on the one thing that matters and 10% on the rest. Oh, I love that one, Folayo. 7, be curious and be a lifelong learner. And last one, 8, don't be afraid to say what you think. If you see things left and others see right, speak up and say your piece. Those are amazing learnings, Folayo.
I love that. Thank you. I'm going to take them all. A couple of those I didn't come up with, but I do stand by them. So thank you.
You're up.
I've never had this experience before, LT and Folayo. We've been doing this podcast for 6 years. And typically what happens is this part of the podcast, I will have arrived at a point of view, just mine, of the human before me, Folayo. And as an analog, it works like this. We're in the conversation. There's an open canvas before me. Through the conversation the three of us are having, paint starts to happen on the canvas. And over time, for me, an image appears. And then what I do is I merely articulate the image that I have now seen of the person that I've spoken to. This time is different, though, LT and Folayo. That was happening here on a canvas. And then, boom, there was another canvas, okay? And then some paint with it. And then, boom, there was another canvas. And so this is the first time for me, Folayo, where the human before me is not contained in a canvas. The human before me is like a museum.
Ooh.
Like a museum. And so I'm going to attempt to walk you through this museum that I believe is you, Folayo.
Very kind. Thank you.
It's all true.
Welcome. So let's start with this on the Get Comfy section. And I ask you about how did you matriculate successfully through Hollywood? And you said, among other things, you might not know me, but when you see my work, you go, well, damn. Damn. It's not important, Folayo, for you to go, hey, here I am. But if you see the work, well, damn. And then you said, you just might be the tool they didn't know they had, the tool in the toolbox. I thought, man, that's really, really interesting. And then when we got to the 5 questions, one of the questions we ask is like, who most influenced you in your career? And you talked about your respect of the sleepers, where you see something they're doing on the brand, but you want to know what's behind who are the people behind the work that I'm seeing here? Not just the work, but who are the people that are not known?
And by the way, the people that are taking credit, the people really behind the work.
The people who really did it, yes. That if you're not really paying attention, you won't know.
Right.
Yeah, you won't know that. And then you also said, this is the first time, Folayo, in the history of our podcast, Larry said, hey Folayo, shout out your father and your mother. And you said, well, they're not people who really seek attention. They know who they are. They know who they are. We've never had anyone do that. If we say, shout out your mom and dad, they just shout them out. He said, they're not really those kind of people. And so this is where I went from one camp. Oh, there's another over here. There's another campus over here. Why doesn't she want to share? What's behind that? Okay, then amongst the 5 questions, we asked your favorite branding experience, and you talked about movies. This is what you talked about, movies. And so Larry pushed you a bit. What movie? What movie? And then you talked about Good Will Hunting. I'm gonna come back to that in a moment. And then later on, you said, you have been like collecting movie stubs for 15 years. 15 years. And then you talked about how you're in a movie theater, which a movie theater is dark, okay? And you spend some time looking at the screen, and you said it's the only time where it's appropriate to hit somebody else. Hey, did you see that? You talked about 6 Sense. Hey, did you see that? Now let me come back to Good Will Hunting. So now I'm over here. So now my head is jerked over here. Why Good Will Hunting? I'm trying to figure this thing out now. Okay. And then I thought about it. I said, oh, with Good Will Hunting, for you brand nerds that don't know this, it's a story about someone who's a janitor at Harvard. And Matt Damon and Ben Affleck wrote this film, got an Oscar for it.
And Robin Williams was the psychologist. It was amazing too.
Yeah.
Also won an Oscar. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, also won an Oscar. Thank you. And so Matt Damon is a janitor at Harvard, and he comes across a problem that one of the professors has put up. This is the world-renowned Robin, that the students cannot solve. They cannot solve this equation. So it stays on the board indefinitely for these very smart students at Harvard to come step forward and solve the problem. They can't solve it. Matt Damon, while he is doing his work, when no one is around, solves the problem. Mm-hmm. When no one's around. Okay. Now, students may have been in the hallways and that kind of thing, but when he was in the room, there was no one around. Okay. Then you said something that kind of had my head jerk all the way around, almost like Exorcist style. You said you were a preemie. Our second daughter, Lauren, was a preemie. And when we would go and see her, Folayo, what was interesting is she was in this thing, looked like a crib, but it was plastic. And so, or glass or something. So you could see her. And she was there by herself, alone in this thing. Yet, she was surrounded by other babies and nurses and doctors and that kind of thing. So she was simultaneously, as a preemie, alone and with. Alone and with. Good Will Hunting. Matt Damon was alone solving the problem, yet with others in the background. When Folayo says she's fine looking left when everyone else is looking right. Folayo is comfortable being alone looking left, but yet with those that are on the right. When she talks about sleepers, she's very fine going, okay, I'm fine being alone, discovering who did this work, and with everyone else who consumes the work. Her parents, yep, I'm okay being alone with mom and dad. I know them, okay, and with them out trying to see a movie Pinocchio when I want to see a real version. They want to see the animated version. I'm comfortable in all of that, which leads me to the end, Folayo Lasaki. I think you are, Folayo Lasaki, alone and with the goodwill hunter of the marketing game. You are his character in real life in the marketing game.
Wow, that is a lot to live up to. He's a genius. That is so sweet. That is, wow, that's so nice.
That's deep and dead on.
That is very deep, and it's interesting to hear you come to that from this chat. So nice, so nice.
That's awesome. Folayo, it is you. It's
Thank
perfect. Folayo, before we sign off, anything that you'd like to share that you've learned from our wonderful conversation today?
I mean, I think that for me, I just really thank you. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate you having me, and I appreciate just being able to talk and reconnect with the both of you. If I've learned anything from this conversation, I think that it is have more of these conversations. Like even you summing these things up, I'm like, I never would have thought about it like that. Wow. Like, I think that that'll be my biggest takeaway, and I hope that that's a big takeaway for other people. I love that I'm able to join in on podcasts, because you don't have as much time to just have like cool, deep conversations with people just in your day to day. But making time for this when it's not recorded, it's just I got a lot out of this conversation. So like, I'm glad we recorded it, and I'm glad other people can hear it, but even if they didn't, and even if we didn't, I got a lot out of it. So I hope that other people talk to more people. Don't text, talk.
We got a lot out of it, and that is a great way to say, yes, don't text, talk. That's a great learning and great way to segue to the real end here. So brand nerds, thanks for listening to Brands, Beats, and Bytes. The executive producers are Jeff Shirley, Daryl DC Cobb, and Larry Taman, Haley Cobb, and Jay Kate, and Tom Bureau.
The Podfather.
That is he. And if you do like this podcast, please subscribe and share. And for those on Apple Podcasts, if you are so inclined, we love those excellent reviews. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we look forward to next time, where we will have more insightful and enlightening talk about marketing.